Thank you for joining us on the Jennylyn Show, formerly known as Give It a Name with Jennylyn. Today, I'm joined on my show with Eason Ramson, with whom I'm so honored to speak, just because he has so many inspiring and great stories to share with us. Eason, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Jennylyn.
I know that Saturdays are people's busy days and they have so much things to catch up on, so I'm happy that you could join me.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I know that you are a former 49er player who was in the first winning Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe I'm sitting here with you.
Yeah, I was fortunate to be part of the 49ers' first Super Bowl team. We're actually the Cinderella team because no one expected that we would do what we did. And about mid-season, when we were winning games, everybody was still saying, "Oh, they're not for real." And then a point came where we started to believe in ourselves, and we pushed it forward. And fortunate to get to the Super Bowl and win it.
Wow, that's really interesting. I mean, I think it's great because I came to America in 1986, and I went to a few 49er games because my ex-husband was a 49er fan. And I remember sitting in the stand and people getting all excited and I'm clapping with them. I don't know what the hell I'm clapping. I didn't quite understand the game because the only thing that was close to that I had any exposure to prior to coming here was rugby.
Right.
Where it looks really similar.
The original football.
It really?
Yeah.
Ah, see, that too I didn't know. Every day of your life you learn something
There
new.
you go.
And so this ring that you're wearing is what you got for being a winner.
Yes, this is Super Bowl 16, the championship ring that we got from the Super Bowl.
And so I would imagine that you wear it all the time.
Well, I wear it all, often, and there's a story behind that. A lot of my ex-teammates, when I see them, they don't wear their rings, but I wear mine because there's a period in my life when I didn't have it.
Good. So tell us about that period.
Well, there's a period in my life when I didn't have the ring because when I retired from the NFL, I retired with an addiction to crack cocaine, and that addiction cost me $1,000 a day, and subsequently that addiction cost me my freedom. Everything I earned in the NFL, 10 years in the NFL, and I also lost my will to live.
Did they take the ring back from you?
No, I knew a guy that was a bail bondsman. I'm from Sacramento, and he owned a bail bonds in Sacramento, and our paths crossed one day, and he looked at my hand, he saw the ring on my finger, and he says, "You know what?" He says, "I know what you're going through." And he said, I'm going to give you some money. And he said, I want you to give me that ring. He said, "I'm going to give you some money, you give me that ring." And he says, "I really hope that you make it through, but if you don't, I'm going to keep this ring for your kids."
Oh my gosh, where's that man now?
He's still in Sacramento. He still has that bail bonds.
And he's a good friend of yours.
He's a good friend. He kept this ring for over 10 years, because shortly after that conversation, I ran into some trouble. I got shot in the back. That bullet landed 1/8 of an inch from my spine, and could have paralyzed me, exited my side. Still didn't wake me up because I survived from that. Then I had an altercation with some drug dealers that busted my head open, and they beat me down with bats, and they left me in a dark alleyway, and I lost almost a pint of blood. Then after that, I landed in prison, and I spent most of the 90s, so 10 years, in prison.
What in the world would have gotten such a successful person as yourself to go down that path?
Well, peer pressure, and I had a lot of pain that I was holding on to as a young adolescent, and pain towards my father. anger towards my father and our relationship that I grew up with under him, always seeking his approval, but never could get it. And he once told me I was never going to be anything. And everything I did in football was to spite him, to show him that you know what, you're wrong. And I recognized early on that when I was in high school that my ticket out of the hood, because I grew up in a very impoverished neighborhood in Oak Park, Sacramento,
Yeah.
my ticket out was going to be education and football. And even though he kept telling me I was going to be nothing, I was going to show him. And even as I went up the ladder and I started to be successful and colleges started to look at me, I tried to get him to come to my games. He wouldn't. And he kept telling me I'm never going to be nothing. And he never told me he loved me, but he did provide for me. I had the necessary things that I needed, but just didn't have his approval.
Were you his only child?
No, I was actually adopted, but there was two other. I had a brother and sister, and we all went through the same.
Why would somebody like that adopt children? Obviously, he doesn't really care for kids that much.
Yeah, but they got a check for kids who were adopted.
Oh
they
my
adopted.
God. This world's got so much ugliness in it, So you got on the 49ers team, and I know that it's not easy for anybody just to make that team.
Right.
So you're obviously an incredibly talented, strong person, because it must have taken a lot of perseverance and determination to get you there.
Right.
So you got on the team, and you started playing for the 49ers. At what point did the drugs enter into your life?
Well, the drugs actually entered my life. They entered in college. While I was in college, when I got away from home, because I really looked up to my mother. She was the one that really nurtured me and loved me and was always there for me. And, Mom always gave me advice, But when I left home, I got a little lax and I got a little comfortable, and I started to frequent with people, undesirable people. And one thing that she had always told me, when I was in high school and when I started to be successful, I listened to her advice, and that was, Eason, the people you hang around with are the people you become like. Mm-hmm. And I did that all through high school. And because of that, I had 8 colleges that offered me scholarships when I was a senior, and my GPA was 3.5. And I was well on my road to success. But when I left the home and got away, I started to get a little relaxed, and I started to hang around other people, and I started to do what they did. And I started to experiment with pot, with weed, and I started to smoke marijuana and drink alcohol. And subsequently, by midterm, when we came time for midterms, I didn't know where some of my classes were. So
Really?
I was getting ready to be an embarrassment and be sent back home and lose my scholarship because I was flunking. So I had to regroup.
And you did. You regrouped.
I regrouped, and I did what Mom said. I hung around people I wanted to be like, and I went on and graduated and was drafted into the NFL.
What happened after you got to the NFL?
I got to the NFL, and I always wanted to show Dad that I could get to the top. And when I made it in the NFL, people I've been watching in college, and some of them I've been watching even from high school. Now once I made that team, I was on the team with them. And I remember that first evening after the final cut, they came to embrace me and they said, "Hey, congratulations, Eason, you're one of us. You made it now. And we want to celebrate with you because you're one of us. We want to invite you to go out with us." And back then it was a club, the disco, and invited me to go to the disco with them. And I was honored. Like, wow, this is awesome. These are people I've been watching on TV. They had the fame, the fortune, and everything that I desired that was going to show my dad that I could be somebody. And so I went out with him that night, and we're at the club, and I'm having a good time, and I'm dancing and enjoying myself. And about an hour into the night, one of them came over to me and says, "Hey, E," whispered in my ear. He says, "Why don't you meet us in the restroom in about 15 minutes? We got something for you." Got something for you. And I didn't wait 15 minutes. I was there waiting for them when they got there.
Did you have any clue what that something would be?
I didn't know. I just know that these are the people that I looked up to, and these were the people that I wanted to be like. And they were asking me to do something, and I did what they asked me to do. And I went to that restroom, and I waited for them. And when they got to that restroom, one of them, they surrounded me, and they embraced me, and then one of them reached in his pocket, and he pulled out a little vial. And that vial had a white substance in it. On top, there was a cap, and he screwed the cap off. And on that, at the end of that cap, there was a spoon that was on a chain.
Yeah.
He dipped it into the bottle, and he says, "Congratulations, Eason. You've made it to the NFL, and now you deserve the rich man's high." And he put it up to my nose. You're talking about peer pressure.
And that changed your life, right?
So this is peer pressure at its finest.
And this is day one of being drafted.
Yep. This is like my induction to the NFL. And I had about 30 seconds, to make that decision. And of course, like I said, I wanted to be just like them. They had everything. Of course, I've seen this drug in college. I've seen it in high school. But now I've made it. And I decided that day that I was going to try it, because they asked me to. And I tried it. And immediately in my mind, I equated that drug with success, the rich man's high.
Oh my God. So how were you able to play to get to the Super Bowl then, if you were?
Well, there's there's drugs and addiction. There's this thing called a continuum, and it goes through, you begin by experimenting, and then you go to the stages of recreation, and from there to abuse, and then to the addiction, which is actually a dependency. And I went through those stages, and of course, the more games we won, the more we celebrated, and the more I celebrated, the more drugs I did. And we went to the Super Bowl that year. We were 16-3. So the more games we won, the more drugs I did, and I moved through that continuum of addiction from the experimental stage into the abuse stage, to where I became addicted, and my addiction grew. Fortunately, I was able to hang on, but by 1984, my addiction was starting to show up, and Bill Walsh suspected that there was something going on with me. But back then, they didn't have all this drug testing and stuff that they have now. And subsequently, Bill decided to trade me, and he traded me off to the Denver Broncos. And
was that a demotion? Because I don't know that much about. Or is
a trade is, I still had value because, I was a good backup player.
Yeah.
And, for sometimes when you're on a championship team, the backup players they can go to another team and be a starter. So they traded me to the Denver Broncos, and I packed up my bags and I went off to Denver, and
was that a wake-up call for you, or did you?
You would think it would be a wake-up call, but all I did was move to Denver, and I went to find new connections when I got to Denver, and my addiction continued, and it continued for Denver. I left Denver, stayed there 2 years, and then they traded me to the Buffalo Bills. And 1986 and 1987, I played with the Bills. And by 1986, my addiction grew from powder cocaine to crack cocaine.
Oh, they're two different ones?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yes. If I sound stupid, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Crack
they're
cocaine.
two different ones.
And I started using crack, and I actually, in 1987, I actually missed a game
Because of it?
because I was high. I was smoking crack, and I was a starter on the team, and don't show up to the game. It's just they want to know what's going on, and by the end of that year, I decided to retire.
So you retired before they asked you to go.
My drug habit was getting out of control, and I thought that I would rather just retire and smoke crack because I was complacent with smoking crack. When I got high, I didn't have to deal with my problems. I didn't have to feel my inner pain, and.
Well, you mentioned that it was $1,000 a day habit. How does one sustain a habit like that? I mean, I'm sure you made good money as an NFL player, but it's not a bottomless pit, is it?
Well, that's why I ended up in prison, because I used up everything that I made. All the things that I had built up, I sold for drugs. I made poor business decisions for drugs, and then I became. It got to the point where I became homeless. I would do whatever it took to sustain my dependency, and I robbed and I stole, and I became ruthless to at any cost I would get the drug I needed.
Oh, this breaks my heart. So you wound up in jail. What happened the day when you were actually arrested and put in jail?
Well, I was actually arrested 3 times, and I did 3 prison terms. And the first time, they actually gave me opportunity to go to a state prison where there was a drug rehab down in Los Angeles, and I actually did that program. So I was locked up almost 3 years. I did the program, and I got out. And I was on parole, and shortly after I got out, I relapsed. I started using crack again, and then I got arrested again. And when the first time I had 10 strong arm robberies when I got arrested. I was robbing people at ATM machines, and I had 10 of them. And in my own hometown, where everybody knew me, I'm hometown hero at one point, where they had the Superbowl parade and everything in honor of me. And but I got to where I was robbing people with ATM machines, and
you didn't rob me. Do you remember?
No.
We just have to lighten this up.
So when I took the first deal, they commuted my sentence because it was a 7-year deal, and they commuted my sentence. I did 3 of those years, and they commuted my sentence, and they suspended another 3 of those years if I completed the drug rehab and stayed clean. And so when I got out, that suspended sentence, was still there, and then I relapsed, and when I got rearrested, then all that came back on me again. So,
do you think that you were able to relapse and go back and relapse and go back as many times as you went back because you're known as a sport hero?
No, I think the relapse thing was it's what happens when you really don't buy into it, and you really don't commit to change. And all those times in my life, I had probably tried rehab 4 or 5 times, but I wasn't committed. I was doing it because I was on probation or parole, and I did it because somebody else wanted me to. It wasn't because I wanted it. Mm-hmm. And the light didn't come on for me until my 3rd arrest. I was facing 35 to life, because now my record had got so extensive until they felt I was a threat to society, and that I shouldn't be allowed to walk the streets free.
We're running out of time, and there's so much we still want to cover. So you went back to jail. You supposedly had gone back for 35 to life, you said?
I was facing 35 to life, and then at that point, Bill Walsh, Keena Turner, Ronnie Lott, Bubba Paris, guys that I played with were old teammates of mine. They heard what was going on. They've heard that one of their teammates had fallen and that I was facing this life sentence, and they rallied to write letters to visit me. Bubba Paris came to the court and one of my court hearings and spoke to the judge and let them know that there's something in me worth saving, and convinced them to give me another chance. And at that point, the 35 to life got commuted to 28 months with halftime. And when that happened, I had already asked. I was talking to Bubba one time and on the phone, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm facing 35 to life. He said, go back to your cell. He said, I want you to get on your knees and I want you to pray for a miracle. And I did that.
Prayer works.
And I prayed for a miracle.
I always say that. I love it.
I prayed for a miracle, and the light came on. And at that point, I promised myself that I was going to do whatever it took to turn my life around, whether I had to stay in prison or whether I did become a free man again. I was willing to do whatever it took. And so when they commuted my sentence, they commuted to 28 months with half. I did about a year and a half, and I got out. And before I got out, I wrote letters to Walden House, and I asked them, I told them my story, and I told them I wanted to change and I wanted help. Something I could never do before. I couldn't raise my hand and say, I need help. And so I raised my hand, I asked for help. They accepted me in their program, and so when I paroled, I didn't go anywhere else. I went straight to treatment.
Wonderful. Wow, and that's been how many years ago?
12 years.
And what are you doing now? Because we're running out of time, and I want to talk about what you're doing now.
Well, I pay it forward. I'm a director for the Center for Academic Reentry and Empowerment. I've taken small steps every day in those 12 years, and today I'm paying it forward. I'm a principal. Working with at-risk teens at the Bayview Hunters Point YMCA. And I have 2 schools there where I work with youth who have gone through challenges like me, youth who don't go to school, some of them as long as 2 years. We get them re-engaged, we get them grounded, and we find out what their needs are, and then we develop support for the whole child, and we get them to their diploma.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love when good comes out of bad. So you also have a nonprofit organization. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Pros and Cons for Kids. And so the other thing that I do is I believe that everything happens for a reason. And I believe that
I agree.
That God allowed those things in my life and for opportunity for me to learn. And those things I have learned from have written my resume, and I have developed a nonprofit called Pros and Cons for Kids. And what we do with Pros and Cons for Kids is we go into group homes, we go into juvenile halls, we go into schools, boys and girls clubs, and we do workshops to teach youth how to deal with peer pressure in the face of drugs and alcohol. And we teach them how to say no, because the big advertisements is just say no to drugs. Well, how in the heck do you do that when you're in the face of peer pressure, And that's the part that's missing. And so what we do is we spend time, I take people like myself, pros, some ex-cons who have turned their life around, and we do workshops, and we go in there and we teach the kids how to look their peers in the face and say, no, I'm cool. Because we teach them what the outcomes can be, and we teach them about the process of addiction, and we give them skills to say no.
So do you look back on your life and think, I wish I had someone to teach me or give me the message that I'm now giving to these kids? And if you had, do you think you would have listened?
I think I would have listened. And that's usually how I start my workshops. I tell the kids, I hope they take this opportunity to listen to what I have to say, because when I was their ages, I only wished that someone had came and talked and about, the process of addiction, the continuum of addiction, and how you can go from experimental to abuse, and about gateway drugs, and how they can open up the door for you to self-destruct, and how to deal with your pain. I only wish that someone had came forward and had taught me, and that's why today I pay it forward, and I teach youth the things that I have been taught, and how to say no, and how to be successful, and how to navigate systems successfully, and get what they need in life.
I thank you so much. I mean, your story has touched my heart, as have all the other people who've had like experiences shared with me. I feel so much, I feel your pain, because I know there are times in my life when I made choices, maybe not necessarily with drugs, but with things, knowing the outcome and doing it anyway because I think I'm bigger than whatever it is, and it's not going to do to me what it's done to others. And so many people tell themselves that lie and wind up where you are. Great people, wonderful people. And as we all know from history, some of those people haven't had the chance you've had because they're dead.
Right.
So I thank you so much for taking the time out and coming here and sharing your story with us. I really hope that more people are going to hear what you are saying, and more platforms will be made available for you to go and educate people, to hopefully teach them. Irregardless of what group you're in, do not cave into the peer pressure, because every action has a consequence, and you know what it is, and you are not immune. You can become ruined because of those choices. So thank you to you, thank you to my crew, thank you to everyone who watches the show. If you know anybody at all that's going down this road, show them this video, or just tell them where they could go to get help, because life is very short and we should make the best of it and not make the choices that will cause us to be ruined. So thank you, everyone, and I thank my crew that I could sit here and bring these stories to people's attention. Thank you.